Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graban.
Hi, this is Mark Graban. Welcome to episode 161 of my podcast for January 8th, 2013. My guest today is Steve Bell, the author most recently of the book titled Run, Grow, Transform, Integrating Business and Lean IT. Steve's a faculty member for the Lean Enterprise Institute, and he's also the founder of lean4ngo.org, an organization that works with nonprofits in the developing world. He's also the founder of Lean IT Strategies, LLC, where he coaches IT professionals as they partner with their business colleagues to meet the challenges and exploit the opportunities in the rapidly changing technology-enabled business landscape. So we're going to be talking about all things Lean IT today. For more information and for links related to this post, you can go to leanblog.org/161. Well, Steve, it's great talking to you again, and it's a pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast today.
Thank you for the invitation, Mark. It's good to be here.
So we're going to be talking about your work and in your book, but maybe if you could first introduce yourself and your background to the audience and how you got started with Lean.
I'd be happy to. I'll go back to the very beginning. I was raised in Michigan, and so I grew up with real firsthand awareness of the serious challenges that were happening in the auto industry in the 70s and the 80s. Then I graduated from University of Michigan in the 80s with a degree in finance and accounting, and I entered the accounting profession just as the personal computer was becoming popular. And so I found myself in the early beginnings of what would become later the ERP industry. And I specialized in manufacturing, planning, and control systems and MRP, became an instructor for an organization called Apex, and in the early 90s, started hearing from people on the shop floor questions about people talking about flow and pull. And the software people, the people writing MRP at that time, thought they just needed more planning and control systems and complexity. It took us years to figure out what was really going on. As Lean matured, I became one of the first instructors for Apex when they introduced their new lean manufacturing curriculum. That led to my first book, which I published in 2006, where I explored the relationship of lean and ERP, particularly but not exclusively in manufacturing, because there was so much waste and remains to this day so much waste in ERP. The success of that book led to a deeper exploration in enterprise IT in general, which led to the second book, Lean IT, which was awarded Shingo Prize a couple of years ago. That's where I opened up into a broader exploration of Agile software development, IT service management, project management, and the whole broad scope of what IT offers the modern enterprise. And so that's sort of what led me to where I am today, having just released my latest book, which looks at IT from a broader enterprise value stream perspective.
And the title of the book, again, for people who want to go find that, is Run, Grow, Transform. Steve, it's interesting, to hear about your background. I always find it fascinating to, run across people who have come into Lean through a path other than, say, industrial engineering. David Mann is got a social science background, as does Jeffrey Liker, and to have your background with accounting. I'm sure that kind of provides a different perspective, do you find, compared to other people that you work with?
I really believe it does. No matter how you find yourself in the lean practice, no matter in what industry, I think it's human nature to first focus on the mechanics of lean, the tools and the techniques. But when you've really practiced lean for a while, when you've really integrated it into the way you think and act on a daily basis, you realize no matter where you're practicing lean or agile, in a hospital, in a bank, in a manufacturing shop floor, it's about thinking, it's about how you address problems, and ultimately it's about how you work with people in teams. And I think that's universal. So you can come at lean from any background in any discipline and find yourself a part of the broader lean community.
Yeah, and so the things you talk about there are great general lean thinking, lean management principles that I think most of the listeners, regardless of their backgrounds here, would recognize. So can you talk a little bit? Why is lean thinking powerful or important? Within the realm of IT?
Okay. Well, nowadays, it's not surprising to anyone that most industries rely on skilled utilization of information systems. For example, in healthcare, you're very familiar with the impact that electronic medical records have made in the last few
Mm-hmm.
years when they're adopted properly. In financial services, IT is really now the shop floor of banking, and there are many disruptive business models in financial services that are utilizing internet and mobility. And in manufacturing, many, if not most products these days, whether you're in aerospace or automotive or consumer appliances, have a significant amount of technology embedded in them. Today's automobiles and kitchen appliances, for example, have become a platform for sophisticated software and network integration. And then the relationship a manufacturer or anyone in industry has with their customers through the internet, through social networking, through mobility, through collaboration tools and communication tools. IT has really changed the whole game in terms of how we add value to our customers. And so no matter what industry, it really is important to master those IT capabilities, which begs a second question, which is what are IT capabilities? It seems like a simple question, but in my experience, IT has evolved to have four important and distinct aspects. The one that we most often think about is information and information systems that enable business processes. Our ERP systems, our business intelligence systems, those things that help us run the business better. But then there's also the information gathering and analysis, business intelligence, analytics, a realm of data analysis that's coming about now that we're exposing so much of our activity and our behavior on the internet that's becoming more and more powerful. I mentioned earlier the third aspect, which is technology incorporated in all aspects of product design and the way we relate and interact with our customers. And then finally, as just a general medium for information exchange and communication and collaboration within our enterprise and with our customers in the larger marketplace. And so when you look at those four very diverse aspects to the direction that IT is going, we realize that mastery of those capabilities is a way to really add value to the customer and to differentiate ourselves from our competitors in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and you use that word value. I thought it was interesting. And early in the book, you were talking about the idea of lean IT value, and correct me if I took this wrong, but you're saying there is no value in the IT function. That the IT function is enabling the business to provide real customer value. And so, can you kind of comment on that and maybe expand on that to talk about what your definition of quote unquote lean IT would be?
I would, yes. There are only a few businesses where IT constitutes the value proposition itself. You could suggest a company like Google might be a case where their sole reason for existence is the technology. You might even argue Amazon, but I would say that what Amazon really is a highly optimized supply chain organization that could not have done what it did without technology. So in the end, lean thinkers always go back to the customer. What do they want? What do they value? How do we give it to them better, faster, cheaper, and with a better experience? And so to understand what lean IT is, it really starts by understanding the relationship that IT capabilities have with the business and with the end customers that we deliver value to, because that is, after all, the purpose of whatever it is we're in business for. And when you talk about that relationship of the business with IT, it's very interesting. A lean thinker learns that a business is made up of silos. In the horizontal flow of value, the process often crosses multiple silos like finance, procurement, HR, sales, marketing, engineering, finally delivering a product or service into the hands of the customer. And oftentimes people in the business think of IT as just another one of those vertical silos. And in a way it is, but when you really develop a deeper understanding of what an IT organization does, you find that IT itself is made up of its own silos. And so to really develop a working relationship with IT, the people in the business need to have a basic understanding of the functions of IT, and so to understand how to work with them. And there are really two basic elements to an IT organization. There are the operations, and there are what we might call application services. The operations is keeping the servers, the databases, the networks, the desktops, the communications, keeping the lights on. And most IT organizations spend a staggering over 80% of their annual budget just on these basic standardized behaviors. And oftentimes they're not very standard. They're often quite unstable because there are many legacy architectures that have been built on top of each other over the years. And the challenge from a lean perspective is to build operational excellence into that, to improve performance, standardization, reliability. Now, there are some frameworks out there that have been used in the industry for years for IT service management, the most popular being called ITIL, ITIL, which is a disciplined approach to operations management. And lean IT is becoming a very important part in the curriculum of ITIL practitioners because they realize that a good management framework for IT services isn't enough. You also need those practices and behaviors of cross-functional problem solving that lean brings to the table to really bring the value out of IT operations. So that's one. The other side is application services, the delivery of those applications that actually helps the business do what it needs to do. And that breaks down into two categories. There are those businesses that predominantly use off-the-shelf software. I would say healthcare and financial services being two, where a lot of what they do is run by off-the-shelf ERP systems, healthcare information systems that you buy and you integrate, and then you manage the change going forward. And then there are other industries that rely almost predominantly on custom developed software. And in both cases, it's an issue of change management. And here's where the world of Agile and Scrum come in, which are derived and really share the same principles as lean thinking. In fact, Agile and Scrum, if you trace their origins way back, they came from the same place where lean product development came from. Whereas if you look at the origins of IT operations in lean with ITIL, you're really going back to the origins of lean in operations and the Toyota production system. So you're looking at really two sides of the coin, lean operations and lean development, as being complementary but subtly different, and they're both needed in a functioning IT organization.
So I'm curious to hear what are some examples out there, companies, organizations using lean IT practices? What are some of the, what would you consider a good success story in that realm?
Okay. I'll give you one example from both of those domains that I just mentioned. We just completed late last year 2 lean IT summits, one in Europe in Paris in November, and one in North America in Orlando in October. And I'll share a story from each. At the European Lean IT Summit, Philippe Lagnasse, who is the Chief Technology Officer of one of the larger banks in Europe, BNP Paribas, shared a number of success stories with us of applying lean to the IT operations and infrastructure domain. And the interesting story he shared was they're a very sophisticated organization. They've been on the continuous improvement journey for many years, using popular IT industry frameworks like the CMMI maturity model, ISO models, and ITIL. But it wasn't until lean thinking brought everyone together focused on process improvement and value to the customer using basic problem-solving disciplines that lean brings to the table that he really didn't see it all come together. And in just one example he shared in his presentation, delivery dates on this project almost instantly became more reliable. Customers' satisfaction improved over 20% almost immediately. And his backlog of open requests and incidents on this particular system went from over 250 to 0 in just 3 months. So by applying lean and you could say kaizening the whole situation just once, he stabilized the whole situation and brought everybody together on the same page. So that was a pretty remarkable story on the operations engineering side. And then at the North American Lean IT Summit in Orlando, Tom Pater of Nationwide Insurance shared his success stories of applying both agile development and lean management system principles. You mentioned David Mann earlier, and there was a lot of David Mann in his presentation, that not only accelerated their development operations and reduced application defects by over 90% and significantly reduced end user downtime, but in addition to those technical advantages, the lean management system they put in place established a strong linkage, both directing development towards aligning with enterprise strategy and maintaining daily accountability directly with senior leadership on key projects. So that was a great example of Agile and Lean aligning together from an overall enterprise perspective.
Okay, thanks. And you mentioned, I wanted to talk a little bit because I think some of the listeners might not be familiar with some of these different terms that get thrown around. If you can kind of help, kind of tie things together. You mentioned Scrum as a development method. You mentioned Agile. I've done a couple of podcasts with Eric Ries and some others about the lean startup methodology. I mean,
Yes.
how do you see this all fitting together? What's your view on that?
It's all, well, we're all with different disciplines, IT operations, IT development, product development, project management. We're all coming at this from different backgrounds, but we're all finding ourselves deeply rooted in the same lean principles and practices. I'm a real fan of lean startup, and I know, Mark, you were a contributor to that and helped Eric with that.
No, just in a very, 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 very
think,
small way, but
well, okay, but and you've been a real proponent of his ever since. Lean startup is an embodiment of lean thinking in conditions of extremely high uncertainty. Silicon Valley, venture capital, startups, and lean startup has become really popular in the Agile community. Agile, I would say, is an embodiment of lean thinking and practice applied to the art of and the science of software development, application development. And like I said, a lot of the origins of it and the thinking of it came originally from the same sources that lean product development came from. If you were to read something Jeffrey Liker wrote on Toyota Development System, or others who have explored product development. And so the same principles of breaking a large problem down into small chunks and going through rapid adaptive learning, evolving or emergent learning, because in conditions of great uncertainty, which most projects, that's what you have, the last thing you want to do is confidently state you have a project plan and 12 months later you're going to produce this product. The whole idea behind it is you don't know. And the only way to approach a product development, whether it's software or new product or whatever, is to go about it step by step, hypothesis after hypothesis. And by doing that, you reach the right solution faster and with less burn of cash and effort and less risk than if you were to just confidently charge ahead on a predetermined project plan, which is sort of antithetical to the feeling of confidence we would like to have. But it's the way learning works. And I think that's what I particularly like about Lean Startup is the way Eric weaves those stories together about that. Now, Scrum is a particular discipline that sort of emerged within the Agile world. And Scrum is more about the prescriptive practices around team development. And it's become kind of pigeonholed as a technique within software development. But Scrum applies in any team practices. And I am actually right now working in one case where we're starting to blend Scrum and a lean management system together. Many of the principles of Scrum, such as product ownership, daily cadence, stand-up meetings, and other techniques like this are very familiar within the lean management system world. So there really is so much crossover among these disciplines, but there's so much lean can learn from Agile and Scrum, and there's so much that Agile and Scrum can learn with lean that it's one of the things that I'm trying to do is to promote more shared learning among these communities.
Well, yeah, and I agree. There's a lot of opportunity to share, from manufacturing, IT, banking, healthcare. Lean is lean, and we find kind of common threads common themes and principles we can learn, and compare notes on. I think that's really powerful. I want to come back and talk a little bit about the book. One other thing I wanted to ask you about and mention was some classes and workshops that you're doing as a faculty member with the Lean Enterprise Institute. You have a Lean IT class that's being taught, I'm sure, many times this year, but it's going to be in San Francisco, February 6th. I was wondering if you could talk about that workshop and what the plan looks like for the year.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yes, the Lean Enterprise Institute makes one visit a year to San Francisco, and that's coming up February 6th of 2013. And I'll be presenting a one-day Lean IT workshop that covers at a very high level all of the topics that we're talking about here. Talks about the Lean principles and practices. We assume some knowledge of Lean coming into the workshop. We'll typically have some Agile practitioners in the class. We'll typically have some IT operations practitioners in the class. We'll have many Kaizen leaders and business people. We'll occasionally have a senior executive in the room. And what I like to do with this workshop is start with who is in the audience, what industries are they coming from, what challenges do they have, what are their particular levels of understanding about these various practices, and then sort of guide the course to help them each individually learn what they need to know, and at the same time encourage interaction among the audience members, because oftentimes I find the best learning that the participants come from is when they're talking with each other. They're meeting other people on the journey. And that's what I like particularly when LEI presents their workshops, because it attracts very, very curious, very lean-aware people to the table. So I'm looking forward.
Yeah, well, good luck with the workshops. People can go to lean.org, and I'll post a link to the workshop in the show notes for this episode at leanblog.org /161. Steve, coming back to your book again, the title's Run, Grow, Transform, Integrating Business and Lean IT. What's the story behind the name, Run, Grow, Transform?
Well, as we have already talked about, of course, business relies on IT to drive both operational excellence and innovation. The key, though, is we need to do them both. There's so much emphasis these days on innovation, new markets, new business models, disruptive innovation. Virtually every industry right now is in the process of being disrupted in some way by technology and internet and mobility. And so there's a lot of focus on innovation, but we cannot forget that it's not only sufficient to introduce an innovative product, we've got to be able to bring it to market successfully. We've got to deliver it to our customers, make a profit on it, support those customers, and leave them wanting for more. And so one, sort of going off the track here a little bit, but everybody likes to point to Apple as being one of the examples of the most innovative company that we've seen. And that's true. They are consistently innovative. They seem to have an uncanny awareness of what the customer wants. But equally attributable to their success is the fact that they're quite operationally excellent in their supply chain, in their retailing, in their distribution operations. Apple not only consistently delivers new products to the market, but they also take the profit on those new products, and they don't leave much on the table for others. And so they're a great example of an organization that is able to run their current operations effectively, grow their current business model, their customers, their products, their markets, and occasionally introduce a disruptive innovation, sometimes disrupting themselves and disrupting other industries. And the three need to happen together. And that's what I like to tie back to Eric Rice's book, again, Lean Startup, because it's about dealing with uncertainty. In the disruptive space, in the innovative space, you have to deal with conditions of high uncertainty where you're innovating on a daily basis, and not all of your experiments are going to pay off. In a growth mode, where you're profiting, you're capitalizing on your current market position, There's a medium degree of uncertainty, and you need to be able to work with that. And then in the run, in the operational space, you're trying to keep things stabilized, standardized, low variation, and you're trying to run things in an operationally excellent way. And one mistake I see a lot of IT organizations make is they put one governance model and one risk model, and they try to apply it to all areas of their operations. And by doing that, they're shortcutting one of those dimensions of uncertainty. So what I try to do with my new book is blend the disciplines of lean, of agile, of IT service management, and learn what each brings to the table in dealing with these varying degrees of uncertainty so companies can holistically run what they've got efficiently and consistently deliver new and innovative solutions to the marketplace. And I think that that is something that most businesses are struggling with these days.
Yeah, I mean, Apple does. I love Apple products and software. I'm recording this on a Mac. I use Apple products all day long, and you're right. There's a lot of things they do well. I mean, I think the downside with Apple, the thing that a lot of us kind of wring our hands over, and this could be a whole different podcast, so we don't need to get into it too much, is that part of that capturing of the total product cost comes from having products manufactured in China, and arguably the working conditions in the Foxconn factories for Apple and the products of their competitors are pretty bad. And so I think that the difference, a lean factory, a Toyota factory in developing countries, I would presume would still would have kind of modern Western working conditions compared to what they have in China. So
yes, I would agree with you there, and that is subject for a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but one final thing we have time for, talking about different countries. I really am interested in and admire the work that you're doing. An initiative of yours and your wife's called Lean for NGO. So I was wondering if you could tell the listeners a little bit about that and the work that you're doing in some different countries.
I will, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk for a minute on this. I've been involved for many years now, my wife as well, in various nonprofit and NGO activities, particularly in the area of microfinance, which is providing small loans and business skills development to people in very poor countries. And what you learn is that with a little bit of capital and a little bit of education, a poor woman in a poor country can do amazing things, developing self-sufficiency, putting her children through school, keeping them fed and clothed. And I learned over the years that there are some significant parallels between lean, empowerment, working with teams, continuous learning, continuous improvement, and what is so effective, not just in microfinance, but in economic development activities in general. And so a few years ago, we started very modestly a nonprofit organization called Lean for NGO. And there's a website out there, www.lean4, that's the number 4, lean4ngo.org. And what it really is basically at this point a community. It'll point you to a LinkedIn group. We're adding members every day, interesting discussions. The Lean Enterprise Institute is supporting this and has actually been active themselves in promoting lean partnerships with local nonprofits within their own Boston community. Mm-hmm. There's stories from all over the world that are emerging. There's particularly a lot of activity right now in East Africa with one of the world's largest nonprofits, World Vision, right, and introducing a lot of lean and Six Sigma thinking and practice into East Africa. So I think we're really on the front end of this. And what I felt we needed first was a place where people could come together, identify themselves, network, share stories, share knowledge, share tools. And that's what the Lean for NGO is all about right now, is this emerging community. And as more people start doing this and having success stories to share, what I hope we'll do is get the attention of more large NGOs, and particularly the philanthropic funding organizations and governmental and non-governmental funding organizations that fund them, who are particularly interested in outcomes and transparency and operational excellence. And the long-term vision of this is to say, wouldn't it be better if every nonprofit activity, no matter what it was, within your own community or in some place where it's desperately needed, such as East Africa, had the benefit of these practices. And at the same time, those companies that are developing lean skills and capabilities and facilitators and coaches, wouldn't it be a great development opportunity for you to invest and send them to someplace in your own community or to send them someplace else in the world and learn hands-on, applying and developing their own skills while at the same time serving the global community? So that's sort of the long-term intent of where this is going. And what I found is if there's one thing that all lean practitioners share, no matter what their backgrounds and what their industries, we're all very generous people, and we're all willing to share and willing to learn. And so I have high hopes for this in the future.
Well, yeah, and certainly wish you good things in the future with those initiatives, and encourage people to go check out the website lean4ngo.org. Final thoughts, Steve. What final thoughts do you have? What advice would you have for a company that's just getting started with lean IT?
Well, first I would suggest, as it always is in any industry, lean is a journey, and it must be done together. It must be done collaboratively. In this case, I'm talking about business and IT. Mm-hmm. We've gone through decades now of saying we need to align business and IT. We need to integrate business and IT. Well, there's a reason why they're separate, and it takes a deliberate effort to bring them together, to think together, to speak the same language together, to create a spirit of continuous collaboration, co-learning together. There's so much the business needs to learn about technology capabilities, and there's so much technologists need to learn about business needs and customer value, and that's only going to happen when they start coming together. It's not going to be easy, but we need to create the space and the time and the coaching for that to happen. And the other thing I would suggest is everybody needs to learn how to see waste. The moment you see it, you'll never be able to live with it again. But learning to see information waste is tricky because unlike in a physical environment, information waste is very hard to see. It's invisible.
Right.
And often we take it for granted. We just say, that's the way it is. And learning to not accept the status quo, to understand how harmful and wasteful information waste is the first step. So we need to learn to be dissatisfied with it. And I'll just mention there's a free download on my website, Appendix C from the second book, Lean IT, which has several pages of examples of information waste. And I've had a number of people tell me that they printed that out and would hand a copy to everybody and then go on a waste walk and just say, how many, kind of like a Where's Waldo game, how many information waste do you see on this waste walk? And that might be a good place to start. Just create the awareness that waste exists and that there is something you can do about it.
Well, thanks again, Steve Bell, for joining us on the podcast, author of a number of books, including most recently Run, Grow, Transform from CRC Press and Productivity Press, available a lot of different places online. And Steve, do you have any other websites or contact info that you'd want to share with the listeners?
Yep, I invite you to visit my own website. I have downloads on my various books and other content, which is leanitstrategies.com. And Mark, I especially appreciate the invitation to talk with you today and appreciate all that you're doing, sharing this knowledge with the Lean community.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great, as always, talking to you, Steve.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.